Okay, so I'm very happy to introduce our next two speakers. We have with us today, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names, we have Anjali Mehrotra. She serves on the board of directors of the National Organization for Women and is president of National Organization for Women of New Jersey. Anjali also serves on the board of Union County College. This past year, she was a candidate for the New Jersey General Assembly to represent Legislative District 21. Anjali was born and raised in Calcutta, India, and came to New Jersey to pursue higher education. She received a Bachelor of Engineering and a Master of Science from Stevens Institute of Technology in the field of computer science. Then after 7 years as a software consultant, she obtained a certification in digital design from the Parsons School of Design and started her own freelance design business. Anjali is very politically involved. She's worked on campaigns for Democratic women candidates for president, Congress, and for state assembly. In 2020, she served on the national communications team for South Asians for Biden. And she is a founding cabinet member for the newly relaunched Emerge New Jersey, an organization that trains Democratic women to run for office. Anjali earned her certification in diversity and inclusion from Cornell University and serves on the Union County Advisory Board on the status of minorities. To raise awareness regarding period poverty and stigma, Anjali founded Equality Period New Jersey, the first statewide coalition working to achieve menstrual equity that is currently focusing on legislation to provide free menstrual products in New Jersey's public schools. Welcome, Anjali. And also joining us today is Alison James Frizon. Alison is a certified social worker and a graduate of the Newark school system and a proud parent of a future graduate of Newark schools. She is a champion for youth and has a proven track record of helping individuals reach their highest potential. Alison is the founder of Girls Live, Love, Laugh, Inc., a mentoring program in Newark through which she has helped to empower more than 1,200 young women in the city of Newark. Alison also faced challenges early in her life. She struggled with a learning impairment and experienced some mental health challenges when she was young. And although these issues did not hold her back, she actually was undiagnosed until she enrolled in college at age 47. And all of these life experiences have inspired her to run for a seat on the Newark Board of Education this year. The elections are in April. Her campaign has received the endorsement of NASW New Jersey's Political Action for Candidate Election Committee, and we're very happy to support her efforts in Newark to bring change to the Board of Education and to help provide for the youth of Newark. So Alison and Anjali, welcome. Anjali, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for welcoming me to the NSW Lead Conference. I am going to share my screen. I do only have a couple of slides, but I think it'll be easier just to guide the conversation. So since Jeff did such a good job of introducing me with my bio, as you've seen, I wear a lot of hats, and I do honestly believe that my long sort of arduous journey through all the different degrees and jobs that I've held have led me to this position where I get to advocate now on behalf of women and families in New Jersey. And I really believe that this is what I was meant to do. I love what I do. It is definitely a passion, and I hope some of that comes through in the stuff that we talk about now. I know that some of the things that I'm going to say now may be repetitive to what you heard this morning from some of the other presenters, but what I'm hoping is to give you a real sort of real life perspective on how legislation gets passed in New Jersey. You know, what the pitfalls are, some advice, and also how you can really be effective in lobbying for the things that you care about. I am really, really delighted to be here with Alison James Frizon. Alison and I have recently been involved with Emerge because Alison is actually going through an emerge training cohort, and we've been able to connect through that as well. So I'm so pleased to be here today with her. So just to get started, a little bit about NOW, very briefly. The National Organization for Women was founded in 1966, basically because it really came out of employment opportunities and the recognition that women did not have equal access to employment opportunities, and the idea of equal pay. But obviously since then we have grown. We are the largest feminist organization in the country, and the New Jersey chapter is about 45 years old. We have local chapters in New Jersey. We have 8 local chapters, and some of them are actually older than the state chapter. At the state level, we focus on mostly legislative work and policy work. Our local chapters do, more sort of what you think of as a traditional charity organization. Sometimes they will do collection drives and things like that. With the National Organization for Women, what I love about it is that we are a multi-issue organization. And we truly recognize that almost any issue that we talk about, so whether we talk about access to food, housing, healthcare, but even things like voting rights are really women's issues. We don't consider anything pretty much to not be a women's issue. And the reason is that a lot of those issues, even environmental issues, we know impact women disproportionately in a myriad of ways. And then we have sort of the intersectionality piece of it, which we know affects people who fall into one or more sort of marginalized identities, because a woman we know already faces certain discriminations in society. And then if you're a Black person, you face other discriminations. But when you are actually on the intersection of multiple identities, so whether it's race, identity, your sexual orientation, and definitely gender, then it sort of has a combination that can be unique and also was impacted in a different way. Our core issues at NOW are reproductive rights, economic rights, LGBTQ rights, racial justice, ending violence against women, but it's really more gender-based violence in general, and then the constitutional right to equality, which would be the ERA. And as I said, all of these are very sort of encompassing and very broad. I'm going to use a couple of bills that I worked on extensively, and I see some of my partners that I did work on the last 2-3 years with on the call. One of them was the RFA, the Reproductive Freedom Act, and then another bill that we're working on right now, which is the Menstrual Equity Bill, to really sort of illustrate how legislation works in New Jersey in a real-time sort of situation. So what I've learned, we spent 3 years pretty much working on the RFA, the Reproductive Freedom Act. When we started crafting the legislation, to us was we used the code words of rights, equity, and access. And we said that it's not just about having reproductive rights. Obviously that was important. We wanted to make clear that the right to get an abortion in New Jersey was going to be protected regardless of what happens at the federal level. But we also wanted to keep in mind that this is an equity issue, because as we know, like most other things, when you take away voting rights or any other kind of rights, it's usually the marginalized populations, the people who do not have access to resources and money that get impacted. So we wanted to make sure that we focus on the fact that this is really an equity issue. And then the access piece, because we knew that even since Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973, there have always been access issues, because there are communities that just don't have providers that are being able to provide the services that are needed. And there's several reasons for that. So our bill was supposed to be pretty much encompassing of all of that. We had some key things in there, things like no copay, insurance coverage. We had a fund that was supposed to be created to cover abortions for undocumented folk. And a lot of these things that I think we did not recognize, I think at some point we knew that it was going to be a fight. We did not recognize the total sort of lack of, what should I say? I think it would have taken a lot of like courage and conviction on the part of our legislators, especially because, as we all know, abortion is like a bad word, to pass that in an election year. And we did not really recognize that we did not have that. And I think that's really, really important. And that's why I say that when we are building power to provide, true support for a piece of legislation, I think it's really important to have leadership buy-in. I think that was one of the things that eventually caused us a lot of headache and did not see our bill pass. So the leadership buy-in that we're talking about earlier, we talked about the three sort of pieces that you have to go through, right? The state assembly, the state senate, and the governor's office. And it's really important, I think, to have the buy-in from the leaders in those offices. So that's the speaker, the senate president, and the governor, because ultimately they are the ones who set the agenda. And once that agenda, if they are not behind you, your bill possibly is not going to go anywhere. So in the bills that we're working on now, we actually have a brand new bill that we're working on, which is to provide Title IX protections for survivors of sexual assault on campuses. And we are trying a strategy a little bit differently this time with all the lessons we've learned, where we are really going to the leadership first and saying, are you interested in this bill? Do you think it's a good idea? If we have their support, then we're going to spend the time writing the bill. I am very clear. I don't want to spend a year and a half writing a bill which has no hope of passing. So I think that part is really important if you are actually advocating for a bill by yourself. If a bill already exists or it's something that you really believe in, another way to build support is to engage other stakeholders. And what do I mean about that? When you build sort of a coalition around a bill, and we see a lot of that in New Jersey. So we had a coalition for the RFA. The Menstrual Equity Coalition that Jeff mentioned is one that is fighting for the menstrual equity bill. But when we start to do even our new bill that is about the Title IX, we will definitely build a coalition around that. So we will bring in all the stakeholders. So that will include, our university partners, right? We will have organizations in New Jersey that work with survivors of sexual assault. Obviously, we would love to have, our governor's office and the legislative partners. And I always say this, like, we need to believe that our legislators are our partners. That's the only way we're going to work and be able to pass bills. It's really important when you build a coalition, I'll get to this next time, in the next slide, is to be mindful of who you're including the coalition. There is this idea of that we should not be doing work for someone else. The people that the bill is supposed to represent should be part of the coalition. Their voices should be at the table. So again, if we're working on a bill that is for students, in our Menstrual Equity Coalition, we have high school students and college students that we work with, because we are trying to provide a bill to provide menstrual products for students in school bathrooms. The other lesson that we learned from the RFA is to identify the opposition and name them. And what I mean by that is we always knew that the anti-abortion people and even the Catholic Church was going to be vocal about opposing our bill. But I think we shied away a little bit from actually calling them out and some of the talking points that they use, like really bringing it out, because there was this thought behind it that, why should we repeat something that is incorrect, right? And what we've learned from that experience is that did not help us. I think up front, you need to identify who the opposition is going to be. And you don't need to repeat it in a way that is validating their false talking points, but you do need to address it. Because if you don't, then they control the narrative. And it's really important to bring it to a place where you can control it. And I say encourage dissent. I see somebody ask if these lessons learned are published anywhere. Unfortunately, they're not, right? Like then we won't be making these mistakes. This is 3 years of experience with a very, very frustrating sort of process to, try to get this bill passed. Encouraging dissent. What I mean by that is in our coalition, I'm not sure that we always, listen to all the voices equally. There was this tendency, and you all have studied psychology, so the idea of groupthink, where, you want to just believe in the people that are yesing you. And you don't want to listen to somebody who's like, but wait a second, or somebody who's being the devil's advocate. And I think that can be a really, really pitfall that you really need to like watch for, because that can really hurt you in the end. Because you may not want that dissent within your group, but it's going to come from the outside anyway. So it's better that you face it head on and you find a way to address it. Whether it's through your messaging or the way maybe there's something you need to even change in your bill. Be open about that to really bring all the stakeholders in, all the different points of view, because in the end, what that will make for is really a stronger bill. And then lobby. Like I cannot emphasize that enough. When you talked about the points of advocacy, all of the things that they talked about in the first session are important. Yes, the testimony piece, writing letters to the editor, opinion pieces, but also lobbying your legislators. And I do want to bring out at this point, because I noticed in the previous session, Javon mentioned the fact that she is a registered lobbyist. And in New Jersey, we also have what are called registered governmental agents. So if you are actually paid to do the lobbying, I think there's a certain number of hours. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty low, and you can cross that threshold pretty quickly. I think it's like 10 hours or something. If you're going any way beyond those 10 hours in meetings with legislators, you have to be a registered governmental agent. I, unfortunately, don't get paid for the work I do. So I am truly a volunteer advocate. In some ways it's good, sometimes not so good. I think what it works for is that then there are not as many rules that I need to follow. And I don't really, it gives me access to speaking to our legislators in a lot of different arenas. As Jeff also mentioned before, I'm very involved with the Democratic Party. So I tend to go to a lot of functions and things where I meet a lot of our legislators. And I will take every single one of those opportunities to go talk to somebody about the bill that I'm working on. And I think that's really, really important to recognize those opportunities. And New Jersey being the small state that we are, we do have that ability to really get in front of our legislators and talk to them, sort of on an informal basis a lot of times. The outside game versus the inside game. As advocates, what I have learned is that there are two ways you can play this, and sometimes walking the line between them is kind of a little, you have to be careful. So on the one hand, we want to push our legislators, right? So if we find that we have a piece of legislation that we're working on that is not popular, that should not be a discouraging point, right? Because as advocates, that's our job, is to push the envelope. And we want to use every method that we have, whether it's the media, social media, our numbers, right? The sheer number of people, right? To really push our legislators in the direction that we want them to go. But at the same time, I think you have to be careful that you're not pushing them in a way that's gonna, for lack of a better word, piss them off. Because in the end, you want to be invited to the table. And if you get to the point where you're pushing them, where they frankly don't want to have a conversation with you, you have lost that ability to be at the table. So when there is, as it was mentioned before, when there are amendments being made, when they are in the final throes of trying to pass a bill, you want to be able to have a voice in that. And if you're not seen as a partner, if you are seen to be in an adversary role, like you will not be invited in. And so you have to be careful. And sometimes you can choose, even within your coalition, that there may be like 5 groups out there that want to be the outside game. You know, we are going to do the pushing. We are going to do the sort of, you know, all out there, calling them out. And then there could be maybe a couple of groups that are like, wait a second, we are going to do the inside game, where we are going to create that partnership with our legislators so that we are at the table when the decisions are being made.
Anjali, thanks so much. I just want to cut you off, but I want to make sure Alison has time to speak as well. So let me turn things over to Alison, and then if we have time at the end, we can take some questions or you can hit a couple of points you hadn't missed. So Alison, go ahead. Do you need me to share your slide, Alison, or are you able to do that?
You can, Jeff. It's only one slide.
Okay.
And I'm going to be really quick. So I'll give Anjali more time. While Jeff is pulling up my slide, I just want to give a little bit more background about myself as to why I chose the profession that I am in and started my nonprofit. I work for the Department of Child Protection and Permanency. I am an adoption specialist, helping children find their forever home. When I enrolled at Rutgers University, I had one goal, and that goal was to work for the Department of Child Protection and Permanency. As a young child, I survived child sexual abuse, domestic violence, homelessness, and gun violence. So I took on this position to help other individuals like myself and families to overcome their obstacles. I am the founder and CEO of Girls Live, Love, Laugh, Inc. We help girls reach their highest potential. We strengthen their families and make sure the families stay together. I'm the commissioner on the status of women here in the city of Newark. So my entire life came full circles, advocating for girls and women in the city of Newark. This is my reason why I am currently running for a seat on the Newark Board of Education. I have a daughter who is enrolled in the Newark Board of Education. And when I was a younger child in the Newark Board of Education, I did not know that I had a learning impairment or I was dealing with mental health issues. So advocating for children inside of the school system will allow me to advocate for not only my own daughter, but for other children to make sure that they receive the tools they need and have the assessments and to get the help they need before they get to college. Because I didn't receive my help until I was 47 at Rutgers University, and they recommended that I be evaluated. And it was at that time I learned I was dealing with mental health issues and had a learning impairment that I had my entire life. So one of the things that my campaign is focused on is social and emotional learning. This ties into my whole campaign. And I believe that this is something, I know this is something that needs to be put on the Board of Education's curriculum for children to recognize their own strengths. They can identify their feelings and hopefully get the resources that they need. So I'll start with the self-awareness. Self-awareness, it ties into social and mental health. You know, children can do feeling circles to identify how they're feeling during the school day and let the teachers know. Either teachers identify how children are doing behavior-wise. Our children, they go to school, they're looking for many reasons, and love is one of them, and affections. So schools must be equipped with with staff and resources needed to take care of our children's total well-being. And being just self-aware of who you are, making a list of your feelings and journaling your emotions throughout the day can really help a child succeed and during the school year. The second, it's so blurry, I can't see. The second circle is social awareness. Social awareness, I believe, ties in with culture competency, something that, social workers are well endowed in, that we know, and we take professional training throughout the year on social competency, taking others' perspectives into considerations, empathy and compassion. A lot of people don't know it's a difference between empathy and compassion, but there truly is a difference. I believe that the teachers that are, the educators that are in the school, they should take courses and professional learning, focusing on cultural competency. By knowing this, they can have the ability to meet the needs of the children better than what they are doing currently. Because some of the children that they are saying have behavior issues are not behavior issues, it's their culture, the way they were brought up in their culture. Newark has the most diverse population in the schools and the community, and we all should play our part in trying to be as competent as we can when it comes to different types of culture. And managing our time. Everyone needs a breather from this day-to-day stress that we go through during the school day. The children are just going to one class from another. I asked my daughter yesterday, do they have social and emotional learning? She said, yes, we have it once a month. I said, so what are you doing this one day of social and emotional learning? She told me we do crossword puzzles and we exercise. And so I'm standing there waiting for her to go on and tell me other things that they're doing. I said, that's it? She said, yeah, that's it. So our students, they need student learning supports. Again, setting academic goals throughout the year will help with their learning support. We had a debate the other day with NAACP, and I introduced the wraparound program. And I was shocked that no one never heard about the wraparound program, which provides therapy, social workers before and after school programs, transportation. It's a program that provides you with all the resources that a family needs, and it's not a one-size-fits-all program. So I'm totally big on the wraparound program. Angelique, I told you I was going to be fast, so I can allow you to complete your presentation. And relationship building. I'm a mentor, so I know how important mentorships are for children. When we have to talk about relationship buildings, they should bring mentor programs into the schools. It gives us the ability to build positive relationships, especially with diverse groups. Again, culture competency comes into play when we talk about relationship building and mentorship and trust building. This whole circle has the ability to provide families, a community, and especially our students with the tools that they need for the entire school year. Responsible decision making. This is a huge topic that I share with my mentees every Saturday when we meet. Responsible decision making. Who's helping you make the decisions in your life? Make sure the people that you are talking to and you trust, they have the ability to do this for you. So being able to make responsible decision making brings in trust building. The students have to be able to trust their teachers, the social workers, and whomever else that they are going to for help. So I encourage everyone out there, social workers, to please get involved with politics. Advocate for whatever population that it is that you're passionate about. You could write the bills. You could have the opportunity to change the world. We're change agents. What better place to be than be a politician and advocate for whatever it is that you're advocating for? You know, I call myself a champion for youth because my entire life I'm just advocating for children. So get involved. And if you live in Newark, I have to say it because I'm trying to be a politician. Vote on April 14th, A7, Alison K. James for Newark Board of Education. We have to get involved. We can sit back and watch other people make changes. Some are good, some are bad, but we know that social workers are the real champions and change agents. And we should all, each and every one of us, get involved in some type of campaign. You can knock on doors, you can phone bank, but do something, because something along the way is going to spark your interest and you're going to say, this is who I want to be next year. I want to advocate for this, so I'm going to run for a political figure because I'm a change agent, and that's what social workers are built for, to make change in their community. And that concludes my presentation. Jeff, I thank you for the time that you allowed me to stay here. And Angelique, I believe you have more time.
Alison, thank you so much. Your story is so powerful, and it really just demonstrates the triumph of the human spirit and people can achieve when they put their mind, when they have the resources and supports that they need.
True.
I know we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Because Rutgers University really did more to me than what they think. I know I achieved my degree there, but sitting inside the social work classes and listening to them talk about types of trauma and mental health issues and the feelings of it made me recognize that they're talking about me. I've been traumatized all my life, and I didn't even know it because resources were not provided to my family because we lived in the projects and subsidized apartment buildings, and nobody came there to check up on us. I was pulled in a project elevator with a gun held to my head, and when the person went to pull the trigger, the gun jammed. When he ran out of the elevator, I went down to the lower floor. It was a sea of police officers out there with guns drawn, and what they did, they took me to the police cruiser, took me to the makeshift police station that was in the projects, never offered me anything to drink, didn't provide me with any resources, then asked me if I wanted to call my family to let everybody know I was okay. When they were finished interrogating me for 15 hours, they threw me back out there in society with no resources at all. And that's how the people in certain zip codes are being treated. So Rutgers taught me how to advocate for myself, how to look for resources and provide them to the community. I wake up every day trying to figure out how I can be a better person and serve my community. So again, if you live in the city of Newark, vote for Alison K. James for your Newark Board of Education member.
Thank you so much, Alison.
You're welcome.
We have some questions coming in. I see Connie's hand up. Do you want to unmute, Connie?
Oh, actually, I was just clapping. Thank you, though.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions we may have then? For Alison or Anjali, you can raise your hand in the Zoom, or if you'd like to put your question in the chat. I see so many people commenting on the presentation and just thanking all of you for what you do. Anjali, I don't know, while we're waiting for questions to come in, if there's anything else you wanted to follow up on from your presentation?
Sure, I just wanted to add, and I heard a couple of speakers talk about it. Alison just mentioned it. I think Javon mentioned it before, the need to advocate for yourself. You know, and Jeff mentioned this briefly before. You know, I was born and raised in India. I grew up as a young girl, not thinking that I had a voice in what happens to me, frankly, because I lived in a society that was very repressive of women. And it's taken me a long time, and anybody who knows me now will be shocked to learn this, because I certainly don't hold back anymore. But yes, you know, sort of the trauma of what you've gone through stays with you. But honestly, my advice is that don't ever forget, you know, that you are important, and that don't let anybody, regardless of who it is, discount you. And I think that's the lesson that I have learned, that in all my work now, whether I'm working with the sort of the patriarchy of our, you know, election system and our democratic process, or even in coalitions, and I experienced this with the RFA coalition, if you don't feel like your voice is being heard, that you're being given a seat at the table, I would say fight for it. And, you know, I think it was Dice brought up the book, you know, about colored women who want to be in politics. We have to recognize that women, especially women of color, are treated differently. they're going to be treated differently in all the circles that we work in, whether it's advocacy, in the most feminist circles. And I think that was the one thing that surprised me. But I will tell you, I've seen it within the National Organization for Women. I've seen it in the circles that I work in New Jersey, where we have working with people who consider themselves liberal, they consider themselves progressive, and yet you will constantly find yourself fighting to be heard and to have that voice at the table. And don't give up. I know it's difficult, it's hard work, but I'm sure all of you are used to that, especially with a background in social work. You know that you have to keep fighting.
Thanks, Anjali. And while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I do see people that are commenting. Stephanie shares, she agrees with Ms. James regarding academics and children of color. Resources that are culturally necessary for our children can be little to none. Stephanie's also a graduate of the Emerge program that Anjali is a part of, and Alison is a student in. And she's an MSW graduate, and just echoing all the work that social workers can do. I really want to point out also how Alison is again combining some of the clinical knowledge that she gained as a social worker and that she's gained her life and work experiences and the importance of social emotional learning. And she's working to incorporate that into the Newark School District by running as a candidate for the Board of Education. So again, you know, we're taking what we've learned in our schooling, what we've learned through our work, what works, what doesn't work, and taking political action to institute those programs. I do see a question coming in. I see a couple questions. I have one from Courtney Wise. Courtney, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, or should I just read it?
Hi, everyone. Ms. James, what are the changes that are most important to you to bring to the Newark Board of Education? And do you have any insights on how to bring disabilities that children face center to their education? I know growing up for me, I have dyslexia, so it was very hard, and I didn't know until college as well. And Rutgers really helped me and gave me a strong footing like yourself. So I just want to know if you have any ideas on how to bring disabilities that children face in their education front and center.
Is one word: equity. There has to be equality for all children, regardless of their learning abilities. That was one of the things I spoke about on my platform at the last debate. We have to bring the resources in. The wraparound program will assist with the children with disabilities. We have the Newark, I'm saying we because I plan on being on the board. I'm speaking into assistance. So we have $1 billion budget the Newark Board of Education has. And the superintendent, he released the budget last week. And one of the things he stated that we're going to have more social workers being hired into the school. But currently, they only hire social workers with master's degree. So I'm fighting to bring social workers with bachelor's degrees into the school as well, because we do the work also. The more social workers we have, the ability we have to work with students with learning disabilities. I went through the whole school without an assessment. No one even knew that I had a learning disability until I got to college. So I understand what you're going through and what you feel. The only thing I received when I was in school was speech therapy, because the therapists came to the school and they did the speech therapy. But we have to communicate with grassroots organizations who already have people in place that are doing the work. We have to partner with the community, with even faith-based organizations. We're trained for things like this. You know, working with the Department of Child Protection and Permanency, we have to do 40 hours of training on mental health and learning disability and cultural competency. And this is something that the board is not doing. They don't have a plan. They don't have the requirements for them to be professional learning developments that's focused on children with learning disability. There should be a specialist there and enough specialists in the school to even put children in, I don't like to say normal classes, but in traditional classrooms where they don't be isolated or segregated from the rest of the school. There should be a plan in place. We wasn't even ready prepared for the pandemic. But the Board of Education, they have a 10-year plan. That plan needs to be revised because the first and second year the pandemic wasn't included into that plan. We were suffering with mental illnesses and learning loss before the pandemic. So what are we going to do now to bring all these students back up to speed, especially our students that have a learning disability? But their plan hasn't been revised. But once I'm on the board, I'm going to advocate for everyone and bring equity to the table.
So I see a question in the chat that says, do our presenters have personal self-care, confidence, building practices that help sustain them in their policy work for justice? And I can only say I wish. What I've learned is you can, obviously, unfortunately, a lot of times it's really about just taking a step back sometimes, from it when it gets to be overwhelming. But the other thing that really has sustained me is to have sort of my allies, to have a group of people that you know will support you, that are there for you. And also to realize that sometimes you have to sort of pick your battles. And if you're in a situation where you know you're doing justice work, but if it's really, really toxic, sometimes you may just have to remove yourself. I have definitely had to do that several times in my career. So the self-care is important. You have to sort of balance that because the path is not easy. But at some time, you have to recognize that if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to do the work.
Thank you so much, Anjali. We are just about out of time for this presentation. So again, I'm sorry that we did not get through all of the questions, but we have a lot of great presentations ahead of us still today. I believe that Alison and Anjali both shared their email addresses in the chat. And when we follow up after this program, hopefully before the end of this week with your follow-up resources, we'll also include the contact information for the presenters as well, so you can reach out to them. So at this point, it's 11:15, and we are going to take a 15-minute stretch and bio break, grab something to eat, do what you need to do, and we will begin promptly at 11:30 with our next set of presentations. Also, there will be another attendance check when you come back from break. So be ready to have our attendance check. Thanks so much, and we'll see you back here promptly at 11:30.